Greetings and welcome to the 25th episode of Retro Rant. We haven't reviewed adventure games for a while, so this time we have Simon the Sorcerer, released by Adventure Soft in 1993 for the Commodore Amiga and DOS. Now, this is a game I had back in the day, and while it came in 1,000 discs, being an adventure game fanatic, I had been thoroughly trained by the Sierra and LucasArts titles in the fine arts of disc swapping, and I also had a second disc drive which helped immensely. But I have to admit that I didn't like Simon the Sorcerer very much back then, maybe because I had very high expectations of it. And I also see that this game is venerated in every review out there, getting a whopping 8.8 in the Lemon Amiga website. Yet, this is Retro Rant, and nothing is sacred. So let's see after all these decades if Simon the Sorcerer is indeed a gem or rubbish. You control Simon, who is apparently the result of the love affair between Guybrush Threepwood and Rincewind. Simon is a boy who has been accidentally transported to another dimension, and you have to rescue a wizard geezer who goes by the very masculine name of Calypso from the clutches of the evil Sorted. He has to become a sorcerer first, so he must go to the inn to meet the elder wizards who will tell him to master the art of treasure huntery. I might have accidentally mixed up some stories there. Starting with the visuals, this AGA game looks absolutely brilliant. Even though I had the OCS version back in the day, I was amazed by how stunning Simon the Sorcerer looks. The locations look beautiful and the sprites are very detailed, with the possible exception of the Schwarzenegger-like sexy female warrior in the inn. The animation isn't very smooth, but this is typical for the genre and doesn't affect the gameplay much. This is truly one of the best looking adventure games of early 90s. As far as the music is concerned, there are some likable but generic tracks, which I don't really think fit the fantasy setting of the game very well. The CD32 version of the game has some very good voice acting as well, but I cannot find a way to skip the dialogue or a way to make text appear, so I prefer the AGA version. So let's review the actual gameplay of Simon the Sorcerer, starting with the controls. As you can see, this is a blatant copy of LucasArts' Scum engine. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, since I believe Scum to be the best adventure game control method. Yet, you should know how to implement it correctly for the game to be any fun. There are no keyboard shortcuts for choosing verbs and dialogue options. Dialogue cannot be skipped, as we already said, and this makes for some very tedious and repetitive conversations. There is no way to make Simon automatically exit the screen, or at least make him move faster, which would have been quite handy, if not essential in this game, since there is a ton of backtracking involved and Simon surely likes to take his sweet time. There is a map, but it is of very limited use since only some of the important locations are shown, so you have to be prepared for some very nice walkathons. Also, be prepared to draw or download a real map, since this place is quite big and it's filled to the brim with fabulous but pointless screens, which show off the game's graphics, but you get sick of them after a few nice, unending backtracking sessions. Also, my pet hate, the exits of the screens are sometimes not very clear, so this game becomes even harder to navigate. Overall, while the controls are not Chrono Quest bad, they end up impeding the game's flow and enjoyment. The story of Simon the Sorcerer is very weak and lazy. We get to see the antagonist only in the end of the game, while we barely get to know anything about his story and his motives. The rest of the characters, including Simon, are also quite generic and forgettable, with a couple of exceptions. I felt a complete indifference towards the storyline or the hero, which is a bit sad, since if you care a little bit and you become immersed in the game world, you can overlook some shortcomings. Apart from the graphics, the next best part of this game is its humor. The game has a lot of delicious tongue-in-cheek references to Dungeons & Dragons, Lord of the Rings, Jack and the Beanstalk, and there are some witty dialogues and hilarious situations, my favorite being the stew. And what about the puzzles? Well, I find them substandard. And before all the Simon the Sorcerer fanboys get their pitchforks, let me explain. The game suffers from lack of focus and direction, which is the bane of an adventure game. More often than not, you end up not knowing what to do next, and there are no hints and you have a big game world, so you end up going everywhere and trying everything on everything else, hoping that something works. When it actually works, you usually end up with an item that you don't have the faintest clue about its use, so rinse and repeat. This is the main reason I quit the game back in the day, and now, when I revisited it with a little help from a walkthrough, I cannot count the times I thought to myself, how the hell am I supposed to figure that out? Although the puzzles are quite illogical, thankfully they don't have the same degree of moon logic as Discworld, although I don't think any game can match this low. Of course, I should also mention that there is a fair amount of pixel hunting, so be prepared to have a magnifying glass nearby. Overall, I don't think that this game deserves its classic status. It tries to be Monkey Island and fails miserably. It is a pity, since this game is very polished and has a great sense of humor, and could have easily been the game that Discworld was not. It is a below-average title that may appeal to some adventurers because of its humor and fantasy setting. So that's it for now, and I'll see you next time!